Morning, beautiful people. Let's see if I move this a little bit. How is everybody this morning? It is Daily Devotional and it's Tuesday. Yay! So, my name is Red Moon Eagle and this is Daily Devotional. If you haven't been here before, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a non-judgmental, this is an equal and equitable place. I'm going to caveat that with, I say things that are triggering. It is not because I am trying to be triggering or non-inclusive, but I am very, very much working on anti-racist, decolonizing language. I'm working on people first language, and this is a daily devotion. So we're going to talk about things that have to do with spirituality and belief and faith and all the things, and no topic is sacrosanct. I am very much a authentic, 100%, this is the way it is. And working through doing that in a way that is kind and compassionate, in a way that is inclusive to everyone. There are more than 365 daily devotional videos on this channel, so if this one doesn't suit your fancy, you can find another one. Astra the cat is often joining us as she has come to say hello now. And I have changed my format and done a lot of things. So there is probably a video that you would enjoy. There's something for everybody on this channel. So that gets us into today. So those of you who've been following for a while, this last year, I took the opportunity to go through a transformational flow type process where I drew one card for each of the transformational flow stages. And it definitely did its work. It was amazing. And now we're still not done with those decks. So, and I'm done with my Samhain cards. So what I thought I would do is I drew all of the transformational flow cards for the next flow. So these are all of the cards that go with that. But instead of doing all of them at the same time, what I thought I would do is take and use Medicine Heart for the 9 representation, which I haven't done before. And then every day, as I go through each of the flows, do a little bit out of the 9 card I draw, and then each day there will be a different transformational flow combo. So we're going to try that this week, and we're going to see what happens. So the first card is from Alana Fairchild's Medicine Heart, and when I drew this card I laughed because I just sat here and went, okay, in this sequence, what would be the 9 card? And it was the Ajayu, which is the white snow owl, which I giggled. So I'll read this. Ajayu is a Quechua word, the native language of the indigenous Quechua peoples of the Andes, the meaning of which encompasses the intertwined realities of soul, spirit, and cosmos. The Quechua concept of the soul, there is an understanding that it belongs to both the human body and to the cosmos. When there is disruption in the soul, then the body and the cosmos are disrupted too. Harmony in all 3 realms is understood as essential to well-being. Culturally defined moral transgressions are considered disruptive to the interrelationship between humanity and the spiritual realms. The acts of atonement are prescribed by the shaman to restore balance and order. Confession to the shaman is an important initial step towards understanding what appropriate atonement should involve to facilitate healing. To speak freely in a non-judgmental space can be unburdening of the soul, allowing for clarity and processing of complex experiences. Allowing for clarity, that which hid in the shadows looming forebodingly can be rendered far more manageable when reckoned with in the clear light of acknowledgement. To speak of something facilitates not only a process to resolve a situation, but sometimes is sufficient in its own to trigger a release. That may include the release of power, burden, blessing, emotion, higher understanding, which leads to liberation of compassion and setting an intention to speak truthfully without fear, the healing evolutionary process is set aflame. That is complex. So that's the 9 card, and then this is the 1-5 card in the transformational flow. And this one is communication. It's from the Sacred Geometry Activations Oracle. The frequency of communication supports our ability to exchange information in many different forms. It reminds us to run every piece of information, both incoming and outgoing, through our heart center of our truth to stay in the flow of source and balanced exchange. Communication is the process of sharing information between sender and recipient. For humans, this usually takes place through spoken and written words, gestures, behaviors, touch, but it can also happen through more subtle languages like chemistry and energetics. Communication is the core of all relations, whether interpersonal, that's between people, or in the way which our inner world and body talk to us. While words have predominantly been the way of humankind, aka humankind communicating, in most of modern history, this energy invites us to develop our abilities to receive, translate, and share messages that arise from the depths of within. Most of these messages will emerge as feelings or intuitive thought. We might find that the words we've been waiting to use for so long hold far more complex, subtle energy than we ever imagined. That leads us to realizing more expanded and subtle meaning. I love this. So I giggled when I drew the 9 card because it just goes with all of the flow for this week. So communication is the first, the 1-5 transformation. But 9 is before 1 in this particular process. And 9 is telling us that in the communication creativity, that 1-5 space, we are looking at communication intertwined between the realities of soul, spirit, and cosmos. We are looking at harmony between all of the realms, and we are looking at the initial step forward is understanding the appropriate atonement that should facilitate healing. To speak, to communicate non-judgmentally in a non-judgmental space. We are looking at finding in communication that which is hid in the shadows, looming and foreboding. And to speak of something facilitates not only the process to resolve the situation, but also to trigger its own release. That may include the release of power, burden, blessing, emotional, higher understanding, which leads to liberation in the experience of compassion. Setting an intention to speak truthfully without fear, the healing and evolutionary process is set aflame. I love that. Aflame, aflame, aflame. Okay. So what does that all mean? Okay, for today's daily devotional, I think kind of how I started this intro. Let's breathe into that. One of the things about communicating is that we have the written word, we have sign language, we have body language, we have indigenous speech that was done with hands and body. That's kind of a universal speech. We have music, we have vibration, we have sound, we have sight, we can communicate through smell, we can communicate through taste, right? The different kinds of food. We can communicate through hidden meaning, right? Like the meaning of flowers. There's a whole language of flowers. All of these ways are different ways of communicating. In our Western world, we do this. We talk. We talk, and our communication is via the magical interwebs. We can call our friends on the phone. I know I use it this way. Some people say this. We have so many different ways of communicating, and yet we still do it so badly, so poorly. We do it so ineffectually. And one of the things that in this particular flow I think is important to pay attention to is when we are communicating, we try to use as clear as possible ways of doing it. And in the bio number paradigm, 3 would be the one that says you talk too much. Sum it up, keep it simple, stupid. And that's valid. So because we all communicate differently and we all come from 9 different places, the one transformation reminds me of that creativity, of that ability to tap into what's going to be needed, what are the pieces that flow together, how do you know the pattern works, and the 9, which holds all of it together. This is the body, mind, spirit, soul, emotion. This is the whole kit and caboodle, you and your soul, you, your spiritual entity inside the meat suit. This holds all of the space. And we all have the interface, which is the spiritual entity in the meat suit. So far, I haven't met anybody that didn't have a meat suit, so there's that. So when we're communicating in this realm with the meat suit interface, we all have a different way of doing it. It's all unique. Our spiritual being has a purpose here. We have a blueprint. We're trying to do the thing we're here to do. Excuse me, that came out of nowhere. We're here to do the thing we're here to do, okay? Whew, apparently I need to take a good deep breath. So if we're here to do the thing we're here to do, as spiritual entities, how do we communicate? How do we get the thing across that we're supposed to be getting across? How do we do the thing we're supposed to do? Well, this card is saying that it has to do with our frequency. It has to do with our vibration. It has to do with our integration of the meat suit and the spirit, right? The spirit that's trying to talk through the meat suit. We have to integrate that at whatever frequency helps it vibrate in a way that is going to be clear and concise. One of the most beautiful things that I've seen in my lifetime is people that have gone from the inability to communicate, that were trapped in bodies that were crippled or paralyzed or handicapped in some way. And they've found a way to communicate. We've found a way to use technology, this beautiful advanced technology, to help them have speech. There was this beautiful thing I saw, it was a while ago, this gentleman who has a disability of some kind. He went on to, I think it was America's Most Talented, or maybe it was British Most Talented, I don't know, it was one of those talented shows, and it came up like on my reel. And he was using his iPad talk function to tell his jokes, to communicate. And he did it so well. He pushed the button, he had it pre-programmed, and then he would smile. He would use his body separate from the voice to communicate with the audience. It was so fun. And it was so, it just made my heart sing when I saw that. I actually watched it twice because I couldn't pay attention to what his shtick was, because I was so happy about seeing this inclusiveness, this equity that brought equality to this person's experience in the world, gave him an ability to communicate, not just at home or with his family members or out at a job. He can communicate with the world. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that a beautiful thing? Yes, that is beautiful. That is a perfect example of how we could use our technology to communicate. And there's so much fear right now wrapped into the possibilities of outcomes. And I want to bring us back to the fear of the 1-5 transformation, or let me rephrase that. I would like to bring us back to the shame spiral of the 1-5 transformational flow. The shadow of the 1-5 in the bio numbers has to do with shame. And the shame of not knowing, the shame of not perfect. And when you talk about communication and you're talking about this body, mind, spirit, emotion, this whole soul entity living in a human meat suit, the 1 in the bio numbers is in the throat. It's the throat chakra. So it's all of this, like your cochlear, your ear, all of your mouth, your throat, all the way down to the edge of that 3. It's right down here, kind of like the necklace they give you if you have to have thyroid surgery. It's right here. That is your throat chakra too. And the throat chakra is speech, sound, communication. It's all of your soft palate, your teeth. That's why when people have dreams of all their teeth falling out, it's an indication like you need to speak your truth. You really need to get your truth out there. You need to stop swallowing your truth. If you've had lockjaw, if you've had, if you've had like a lot of teeth problems, yes, some of that is behavior and dietary and things like that. But from a spiritual, like energetic perspective, this is all communication. This is all your ability and desire and want to be authentic in your form of communication. This is about being authentic in how you're presenting yourself as a body, mind, spirit, emotional, a spiritual entity living in a meat suit out into the world. And the shadow of that is the shame of not having the right answer, the shame of not being perfect, the shame of saying the wrong thing, the shame of swallowing your wisdom, like holding back your wisdom, not hearing the wisdom of others and honoring it back with them. That's all one. That's all throat chakra. This book right here, I don't know if this is an older printing or not, probably. This book right here, Judith, or Anadia Judith, she's amazing. She talks a lot about, she has this amazing section about, well, she talks about all of the chakras, but she definitely has an amazing way of talking about she calls it the 5th chakra. I'm not going to argue with that, but I have issues with that sometimes. And the element is sound. And it is very much about when you've been verbally abused, if you've been lied to, if you're excessively critical or you've been excessively critical, someone's been critical towards you. Secrets, threats of telling, authoritarian, don't talk back to me, parents. Alcoholic, chemically dependent, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. That's it. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. That's what I was looking for as I was reading through it. That's like the one thing. And that's the shadow. So to do the opposite of the shadow, to really dig into the opposite of that shadow is that creativity. It's that listening. It's the singing and humming. It's the using your voice. It's writing. It's talking. It's leaning into the being with people. And the bio number 1 uses a lot of words, but that communication piece. But 5, this is the fun thing about 5, is that 5 in the chakra system is the 7th chakra. And the shadow of the 5 is withholding information. It's in the bio number shadow, it's not being able to share their wisdom. They have so much wisdom. They tap into that pattern, that universal, like the patterns of how we fit together. And one thing that if that 5 in communication is shut down, the blind obedience will kick in, and they'll get physiologically very uncomfortable about that. They can behave very much like spiritual abuse, forced religiosity, invalidating other people's beliefs. But the light of that 5 is sharing that beautiful wisdom that they have, that beautiful wisdom. And when they're ashamed and when they're in that place of not being able to communicate, they will pre-grieve. This is the amazing thing about that 5 in this communication, is they'll pre-grieve, and they won't always, if they're not connected, they won't always understand why they're so sad. And they know they will know. If they tap in, they'll know what they're pre-grieving for, but they don't always know how to communicate that. So the 1-5 part of the transformational flow with these cards this week is leaning into speaking your truth with radical anti-racist language, radical decolonizing language, radical equity, inclusion, radical diversity. Look at the diversity in your life. I was actually sitting here last night, kind of at the tail end of my night, and I was, it's funny, like, I was pretending that I was watching a video, but I wasn't really listening to it. I was just kind of like thinking about my diversity in my life. And so much of my diversity is based on where I am in the country. I live in a very white, cracker-filled world. Basically, I live in a very white-dominant state, race-wise, right? That thinks itself it's the only race, and that's not what's going on. There is a huge indigenous population in Montana, and it's beautiful, and so culturally rich, and so not heard, by the way. And we don't have a lot of diversity here in where I'm living in what's obvious. It is here, but I was thinking about it last night. I was like, oh, I need to start like making sure that I'm connecting into the diversity that's in my community, because I know it's here and I haven't been doing my due diligence. So when you're looking at your language and you're looking at communicating, where's your diversity? Where's your equity? Where's your inclusion? Where is your inclusive language? And where is it in your life that you hit that bias, that discomfort, that generational trauma? Where do you hit the racism button in your bias? Where do you hit your colonialism in your bias? Where do you hit your hierarchical, linear, patriarchal biases? Where do you hit them in your life, and where can you start learning to communicate in a way that helps you balance the body, mind, spirit, emotion? And from Medicine Heart, this is the medicine card of the draw. This says right here that to speak freely in a non-judgmental space can unburden the soul, allowing for clarity and processing of complex experiences. That which hid in the shadows, looming, foreboding, the monster under the bed, can be rendered far more manageable when reckoned with in a clear light of acknowledgement. To speak something facilitates not only a process to resolve the situation, but sometimes is sufficient on its own to trigger a release. Sometimes, and not just sometimes, I think all the time, but I'm like radically authentic all of the time. I am aware of this. I don't think I've ever seen the inside of a closet. So even when I've tried to pretend, it doesn't work. It's a pretend. And everybody around me knows it. Being authentic and reaching out and saying, hey, I would like to understand. I don't know how to speak with this unbiased perspective and this inclusive language. I don't know how to use these words. I don't know how to use pronouns. I don't know, and I don't. I'm still working on that. I don't know how to talk to you in a way that helps you feel safe and also helps me be as authentic as possible in my worldview. And also, I don't know what the big deal is about A, B, C, and D. I had a conversation with somebody very recently, actually, and those of you who followed me for a while, you've noticed that I'm kind of politically, like, I've decided I'm just going to hit the activist button and I'm just going to keep going, because apparently that's a thing that no longer can be hiding under my bed, right? I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it because I'm trying to figure it out. And this person that I was talking to, they had a different perspective than I did. So I asked them, I said, can you explain it to me? Just explain it to me. I don't want to not be your friend. I don't want to have the impression in my own head, okay, that I'm judging, that I am making internal diagnostically judgy statements or feelings or thoughts and be wrong because, not because I can't be wrong, I'm wrong all the time, but because instead, if I'm doing that, I am unconsciously communicating my own bias. Now, I can learn about something and still disagree with it. That's okay. But I also have the responsibility. This is my personal philosophy. I've said it on this channel before. My personal philosophy is this, that everyone has the right to feel the world how they feel is right. Each person has the right to follow their own choices and their own decisions. They have the right to fill the world how they see fit. Now, they also, if it comes into intersectionality with mine, and they are oppressing my right to those things, that's when we're going to have a problem. Now, does that mean that the person who feels they have the right to be a cannibal, it's okay? Probably not, unless they want to hang out with a whole bunch of other cannibals. And at that point, I think maybe they should need their own space. They need their own space because maybe they're not safe for the rest of us, right? And I do believe, honestly, that everybody really is coming from a place of their spirit inside their meat suit, that they think they're doing the right thing. I really believe that people are trying to do the right thing for themselves and for those that they care about. Now, how they go about it shows a lot of their trauma. It can show their vibrational frequency and their blueprint. It can show where their gifts have been damaged as children or as young adults. It can show layers of intergenerational trauma living in the body. Their knee-jerk bias reactions to things can be generations deep. So yeah, people do behave badly, right? Like when I say I truly believe that all entities inside the meat suit think they're probably doing the right thing, or their behaviors, their way of communicating, they think that they're in the right and they are doing the best they can with the tools they have for the betterment of themselves and those that they care about. They're worried about their family. They're worried about their loved ones. I think those are all true statements. At the same time of that true statement, they may also be deeply wounded, deeply hurting, intergenerational trauma, having been abused maybe as a child. Maybe their vibrational frequency is caught in karma. Maybe they are really, truly afraid of the monster under the bed all of the time. Maybe their spiritual entity inside that meat suit is feeling trapped and doesn't know what to do with this big world. It's big, it's overwhelming. There's so many different entities trying to tell them to do 500 million different things at the same time and telling them that everybody's right. That can be really confusing because I just said, pretty sure everybody thinks they're doing the right thing and we're all here trying to do the right thing. But right is not perfect, okay? There is no perfection. This is where the communication 1-5 come into play. There's no perfect. There is only the pattern. There's only the web. There's only the interconnection that we have with community that helps us go in a direction that's equitable and democratic and fair for everyone. Now, how that plays out, we have so much in history that has told us how it's played out, and we have choices. And I've never had a guide, I've never had a spirit, I've never had an entity ever tell me that no, that choice is not a thing. If anything, that's the one thing that's foundational in all of this, in our meat suit experience, is choice. And the choices, the frequency, your baseline frequency and your blueprint gives you some foundational choices, and you pick them. And we always have these amazing intersectionalities with every choice. The definition of choice is you have one or another to choose from. Now that also means you could have 50 of those, oops, right? Like 50 of those, I don't know which one to pick. This is where daily devotion comes into play. I'm talking about communication. I'm talking about you, the spiritual entity, being at this intersectionality of learning to speak non-judgmental to unburden your soul, to allow for clarity and complex experiences. Communicate. Go out into the world, my beautiful people. This is the daily devotional for today. Go out into the world and ask questions. And ask questions in the most neutral way that you can possibly come at that question. Why? And keep it simple. Don't go for the big things that are happening in the federal government or in the world or the wars in the world. Don't go there. Come back to the center. Maybe ask the guy that's the cashier at Target, right? Say, hey, where'd you come from? Or where are you from? Or where were you originally born? Or where's your family from? Or do you have family in the area? Or what do you celebrate for the holidays? I'm curious. Give yourself the option to be curious, and also give yourself the option to be rejected in that conversation, because the guy at Target might be going, weirdo, why are you asking me that question? You're being nosy. Or when somebody says something online and posts anonymously in a community forum, say, hey, I'm just curious. Are you safe here? Do you feel safe? Would you like to talk on the side? I'd love to do a DM with you. I'd love to understand where you're coming from. Open the doorway to the compassion and the beautiful spirit that you are, because this is the beautiful thing. I know some amazing people that are afraid to step outside of the comfort zone of their own little tiny microcosm. And I get it, it can be scary. But the funny thing is we're all here together. And that reaching out can give you the opportunity to broaden your horizon, to learn something new, to find out another person's perspective. And it's okay if it's different than yours. It's not okay if they want to hurt you. Absolutely. We shouldn't be hurting each other. But it is okay to have a different perspective. It's also okay, completely okay, for you to have the compassion to at least give space to understand. And that is daily devotional today. Be authentic, use your words, use your communication skills, whatever they may be. It doesn't have to be words. And try your best to let that other person fill the space in the world how they see fit. And if it doesn't feel good, and if you don't like it, find out why. What's making you uncomfortable? Is it because they are truly dangerous? Okay, that's valid. Or is it something that's inside of you that's also contributing to that? Bias, intergenerational trauma, fear, shame at being wrong, shame of it not fitting in the pattern, shame of not being able to communicate, shame of not being creative enough, of wanting to be perfect. Those are all things. I love you much. Y'all are wonderful, and I will see you in prayer tomorrow. Blessed be.